Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting of March 13th to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Read the roll, please.
Chairman Aida,
Here.
You got the,
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Claffey,
Here.
Commissioner Fox,
Here. Here.
Commissioner Sobieski,
Here.
Commissioner Woods,
Here.
Commissioner DeCalvo, Commissioner Braverman, Commissioner Giannick.
Okay. We have a full commission, complemented commissioners. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Mr. Planner.
The only item I'd like to remove is the presentation that the consultant for O'Reilly Auto Parts, he would prefer to come at your next meeting to give an update on the status of the project, so he will not be here tonight. I think that's on the agenda under old business. Yeah, old business item 10A, update on petition 01-18. So remove that, please.
Any other changes from commissioners on the agenda? Anything? Okay. Approve the change in the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next item is public participation. Anyone wishing to speak at this time from the public on any item, come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, I'm Dan Henry, I live at 145th Drive. I'm here representing the Kiwanis Club of Newington, I'm its president, and I just want to thank you folks for once again considering our petition so we can start our 28th or 29th year, I lost track, the flea market. We just raise funds for the community, support things like the Memorial Day Parade, Newington Human Service and scholarships and so on, that I'm sure you're all familiar with. Again, I just wanted to thank you again. Thank you.
Okay, that is an item that's on the agenda for scheduling. It's item C. And we'll be taking that up to schedule it. Anyone else from the public? None at this time. There's another opportunity for public participation later on in the meeting. Okay, approval of minutes, the February 13th.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Any corrections or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, they're approved. Next item is zoning enforcement officer's report. Mr.
Good evening, everyone. Before I get to my ZEO report, I do have one temporary sign application to review. It's for 2441 Berlin Turnpike, Cricket Wireless, and it's for a temporary A-frame sign. It meets all of our temporary sign regulations, and I recommend approval of the application with the condition that the sign remain within 5 feet of the business entry as required.
Question.
Yes.
At that business, there are other businesses that have signs already issued because there is a rule within 25 feet of another sign?
There is not.
So where is 2441 Berlin Turnpike?
It's
What other businesses are
From
there?
O'Neill?
The Enterprise?
Yeah, that's
That's it.
that building, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions on that request from the zoning enforcement officer from the commissioners?
Are there any violations prior to the application?
I am not certain, but I believe at one time they may have had a violation, and that's what caused them to apply.
Okay, well, at least they're complying
No, I just didn't.
with our regulations. Mr. Payne.
I noticed that there's other temporary signs that you've gone to people and asked them to remove. Are you reminding them that they could apply for this temporary sign by the doors?
Absolutely, every
Okay.
time, yeah.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Stan.
Andrew, quick question. I see we've got quite a long list on Francis Avenue there, 174. I know that the Amtrak has told them to remove the stuff out of the right-of-way, and I know he still drops stuff in there periodically. At last meeting, one of the neighbors up there, I believe, asked if you or Craig, well, you weren't here, but if Craig had a list of how much money and time it's taken us to this point. Do you have that available for later on for discussion?
Yes.
Okay. The second thing is that you seem to be spending an inordinate amount of time with this guy. Is there any way, maybe you or Craig could come up with a suggestion that somebody could monitor what they're doing, what he's doing there? Because if it's not dropped at 174 Francis Avenue, it's dropped over at Gagnon. It's not dropped at Gagnon, it's at the church or back on the railroad property. And it's taking an awful lot of time and energy for the town services up there. I'm just asking a question. The neighbors, I constantly get calls from the neighbors up there. They're really upset with this. And it doesn't seem to be rectifying itself. I mean, we had an agreement with him. Apparently, he doesn't think that applies anymore or whatever. So I'm just asking because you seem to be burning up an awful lot of your time and other town entities' time.
I'm not sure that I have a suggestion off the top of my head. I know that I put in a lot of hours after our last TPZ meeting when we had a lot of members of the public coming to speak about it. So I put some time into it. It was cleared up on the railroad property. Since then, I've received a few more complaints about vehicles in the right-of-way in front of his building. So I have driven by on my travels on other violations just to monitor the site, and he hasn't left any vehicles there over 24 hours that I've seen, and I've been continually documenting without trying to spend too much time at this point. Craig, do you have any suggestions?
Well, monitoring, that's the easiest part, because we have lots of volunteers in the neighborhood monitoring it. The time consuming.
I'm getting calls from
Yeah,
most of them.
Yeah, thank you very much, yeah. The time consuming part for the staff is then going out to verify that there's something going on improper, contacting the individual, telling him to stop, sending certified mail letters, following up a day or so later to make sure the item has been rectified, and then finding out that it was moved somewhere else, which was also a violation, which results in another round of letters. So it never ends.
Commissioner Fox.
And excuse me.
Go ahead, Stanley.
My concern here is the amount of time that the town is spending on this. It's man hours on this. All right? Plus, the other thing that one of the neighbors called me about the other day, what happens if there's a fire in there? And they can't get in the back, and they've got a lot of elderly people living in there that have breathing problems as it is. So that's another issue that I recommended that they call the town manager, because it's just ridiculous. Thank you.
Commissioner Fox.
I was going to just about to say the same thing. It's through the chairman. Craig, we had talked about this. Did you have, like any inkling of how many man-hours your staff has put into this?
Yes, I spent some time working on that, remembering the different issues that Mike D'Amato spent a lot of time on when he was here, both between blight enforcement and zoning enforcement. And I came up with a rough approximation of over $25,000, but it could be twice that.
$25,000.
Dollars.
Man-hours?
Dollars.
Man-hours?
No, dollars. Dollars that the town
Total
has
hours.
spent on staff time spent working on those two issues.
But is that not part of the job to?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
I don't want people to look at it,
It's not out of
negative.
pocket. It was not out of pocket. It was time, that's how much, well, in terms of hours, it was 300 hours over the past 4 years, roughly. But again, it could be twice
Neighborhood or
All right,
just
so-
that property?
for the two properties that
that-
that the individual
Yeah.
owns. Yeah. Because the vehicles go
I
back
mean,
and forth.
they're not putting, what they're doing, I think is that, they're putting all these hundreds of hours of man-hours into this when they could be doing something else. And in the meantime also, we all know that there's a couple of lawsuits, and I did a little bit of research, and between 174 Francis Avenue and his home at 366 Maple Hill Avenue, attorney's fees were approximately almost $15,000. And, that was whatever they had to do with, moving cars at Francis Avenue and all the nonsense, I won't say nonsense, all the stuff that happened at 366 Maple Hill Avenue. My question is, I think all of those, is when is this going to stop? Andrew, if you, excuse me. Has he done anything? That would result in a citation?
Not recently. He's been able to get around it recently. We've made a lot of progress on the railroad property to get 12-plus cars and 2 trailers off there pretty quickly after the public came out to speak. Since then, I haven't put in a lot of hours, but I've made sure to monitor the property. Within my zoning authority, there's been nothing that I can cite him for in front of that property.
Yeah.
And so I'm monitoring it. If any violations do come up, I'd be sure to go after them.
All right, yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Fang.
In the meantime, though, I passed by today, as I do almost every day now, and it was clean. Let me say there were no cars. It wasn't clean. I mean, he had a whole bunch of pallets stacked up and a couple of car seats. I don't know whether they were on railroad property or not, but I don't know if that's blight or not. Maybe you can take a look and make a decision.
Okay.
Commissioner Payne.
Thank you.
Yep. I have a question for the enforcement officer. 240 Day Street, your report says that an inspection and no violations as of 2/28/19. So that property is all set, is that correct?
Yes. Yes, the flatbed and the unregistered vehicle were removed. The storage unit is not a zoning violation, and to my knowledge is still there.
What is?
There's a storage unit there that was in the original complaint. It was found not to be within our zoning,
What do you mean, a storage unit?
like the big metal storage units.
If I may.
You're saying that's not a violation to have on that? There are 18-wheelers there. The back ends, there's 8 or 9 of them, and one of them is trashed. So why aren't you being consistent in enforcing the property owner there to take that junk off instead of just the flatbed? Why aren't we being consistent? That's a violation along with all the piles of dirt and the pipe and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but
You cited 240 Day Street for a flatbed that was, a complaint was brought in.
yes,
So you drove over there and you handled the flatbed.
yes, with the vehicle, which were.
You talked to the owner of the property about the rest of the stuff on that property
I
that
did.
is in violation.
Well, my complaint was the flatbed, the unregistered vehicle, and the storage unit.
So you're saying just because you see something else, you're not going to follow
I'm
up?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what other
Talking
violations.
about 240
you're
Day
talking-
Street.
Yes,
Okay, that's where the flatbed was.
Yes.
And there's 9 50-foot trailers there, 1 horse, and 1 that's totally broken apart.
okay, I haven't received a complaint for that.
But you went there to look at the trailer. You don't have to get a complaint to act on it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed it. Yeah, I was looking, he had vehicles across the street and the other side and the railroad. I was focused on that, and I didn't look at the,
We're talking about 240 Day Street, the flatbed that was parked at Gagden's property at 240 Day Street.
it's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
My question to you is, did you inform the property owner to remove the rest of the things on the property that don't belong there?
The only thing that I saw there was the storage unit. I think you may be referring to the property across the street.
No, I was there today. There's
Okay.
8,
9.
They've been
9.
there for like 6 months. There's been like 9 to 15 trailers.
and if you went there to remove the flatbed, you'd have to be blind not to see the other trailers and the other junk and the piles of dirt and the pipe that are on the same piece of property. And you just said that because you didn't receive a complaint, you didn't act on it?
Well, also, Andrew's been here for a few months now. He doesn't know all of our zoning regulations. He wouldn't necessarily know, and in fact, I'm not sure everything that you just mentioned is a zoning violation.
It is. Those 18-wheelers aren't supposed to be there. That's supposed to be car parking for for the facility, okay? That's what it was designed for. Overflow parking for the factory that doesn't operate now. Now, those trailers don't even belong, I don't think, to the owner of the property. They belong to somebody else down the street.
Well, that's not relevant, but that's in the industrial zone, right? I'm
Yeah.
remembering. That might not be a zoning violation, but your point's well taken. He'll
So
research it.
If
but-
those trailers aren't a zoning violation, why would the flatbed be of zoning violation then? Tell me that.
Oh, because the flatbed is part of the operation, that car dealership, that car repair business at 174.
And
And it was moved.
Okay, and so those trailers are not part of the Gagnon's property, they belong to somebody else down the road.
Well, that doesn't make it a violation just because they belong to somebody else.
You
Okay,
just
that doesn't
said
make
the
it a-
flatbed was a violation over there because it was part of somebody else's business down the road.
Because it was a violation of the approval that was granted to the person who actually owns that flatbed. But we can certainly follow up and research it to make sure that if there are violations going on there, that the owner gets cited.
It's obvious that when you drive around, if you see, if you go for a complaint, it's obvious that you're not you're not correcting other things as you see them, as you go.
disagree.
Because I've noticed that on the turnpike, you've offered a complaint on a particular property, yet I drive down there and I've noticed other signs in the very close proximity. So, and I don't see where you're offering from the ZEO how many things you found. Very few, too. I mean, we had this conversation. We said that we wanted, this commission, the whole commission said that we want our enforcement done in a consistent manner, and we wanted you to drive around town and not act on a complaint, but drive around and enforce our zoning regulations on a consistent manner.
I believe that I do. I don't know that I can get every single one that you see. Can you give me an example of the
I
sign?
just gave you one on 240 Day Street.
How about the sign example?
O'Neill Plaza, there's a banner on their property, and you were just at the Cricket.
I haven't seen the banner.
I think Verizon is in O'Neill Plaza. I think Cricket's on the other side of the road. Am I correct?
Yes. Okay, to get beyond this,
I have a question.
go ahead.
The Fen Road Plaza,
Yes.
we have multiple violations. Have we thought of, I remember they came in here a few months back and said, we'll address everything that we had. Now we're spending a good amount of time on the Fen Road Plaza.
I'm sorry, what's the Fen Road Plaza?
Stop and Shop.
Stop Shop.
26, 32, 36, 44. I mean,
Right,
we're
Stop and
spending
Shop.
a good amount of time, and this has been going, I brought it up. It's been brought up time and again. Express Cuts keep putting their banners up, the double Verizon signs.
It's cleared now. It's cleared now.
I
They,
just have one other thing, since
Okay.
we're talking about Stop and Shop. They've got the overhangs in the front. They're lit for people to pull up and they can bring their groceries out. Did that come through us for permits for signs? They're illuminated?
not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I'll look into it.
Yeah, look, I saw that the other night driving by, and it's like, where did those come from all of a sudden, so.
The question really on Fen Road is, for the Stop and Shop Plaza, is that in all these other big plazas, we have a bunch in town. Is there a way to send something to the owners of the property, the overall developer, and say, hey, you have multiple violations here, and this is wasting your time? You know, kind of go back to spending the amount of time. I mean, you probably spent 2-3 hours there already.
Sure.
You can enlist
So I
the
didn't know
owner,
if, you know,
his help in
that they
policing
know
his
that
tenants.
there's,
Yeah.
because I remember they came here they wanted to change the zoning code, and they assured us, we'll address all the problems you have out there, and it's just getting worse.
Okay.
So,
This is Stop and Shop.
that's the Stop and Shop, but I don't see the problem.
Have you talked to you're talking about, have you talked to Hayes, the property owner?
No.
Well, then
Yeah,
maybe you
we can-
should,
yep.
maybe you should send a letter to him, so he's aware that we're aware of what's happening on his property. Okay. Can we go back to the cricket item? We have an approval, can we add a motion that to allow the zoning enforcement office to issue him the sign permit.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that is cleaned up. And anything else for the zoning enforcement officer?
I have one other
Yes,
thing.
go ahead.
995 Main Street. Who is the violation against? Is it the pizza restaurant or the Starbucks? Because they're two different addresses. They're two different businesses. It's the second to last page.
Right. Our addressing system is a little kind of goofy, difficult to pick the right address.
I just
But
don't want to
It
cause
was
someone unjust
Sure.
penalty when it's not a Starbucks or it's not the pizza guy.
Fair
If
enough.
I had to guess, I'd say the pizza guy because he's the newest one on the block.
he had an old one, but this one was actually Starbucks.
Okay, I don't.
Yeah. I think that's something I should speak with our information technology department about
One to get offended.
clearing up our system to determine the right address.
Thank you.
Anything else for the zoning enforcement? Okay, we'll move on to remarks by commissioners. Any remarks at this time? Stan?
Did everybody get an email from the town? I know I got one from Craig, but I got one from the town manager's new secretary about filling out a
Survey.
questionnaire.
I didn't get one.
I got it in an email a couple of days ago or something like that, maybe a week. I filled it out. What's your vision of his Newington and what you want to see? And I think there's a couple of courses or classes on that.
Well, the town has scheduled a workshop with CERC
Right, that's-
for later this month, and the mayor invited all the council and the Economic Development Commission and TPZ, but apparently the invitations didn't all go through, apparently, because some of you didn't get it. Okay. I'll let the town manager and secretary know that for some reason some of the TPZ members didn't get theirs.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Next item on the agenda is public hearings. We'll have the secretary read the procedure for public hearings. There's several on here that we have to consider.
The order of proceedings at public hearings shall be as follows. A, convening by chairman. B, reading of the notice by the commission's secretary or a commissioner designated by the chairman to act in his stead. C, identification and location of the property involved by the town planner. D, a statement of the issue to be considered by the chairman or the town planner. E, presentation by applicant limited to 20 minutes unless specific extension is granted by the chair. F, persons wishing to speak in favor of the application, limited to 2 minutes per person. G, persons wishing to speak in opposition to the application, limited to 3 minutes per person. H, rebuttal by the applicant, limited to 5 minutes total. I, rebuttal by the opposition, limited to 5 minutes total. During a public hearing, it shall be within the discretion of the chairman whether the time limitation should be varied slightly, provided the commission consents to any such variance. In no case shall an extension be more than 20% of the allotted indicated above, or 1 minute, whichever is greater.
Please read petition 03-19.
A, petition 03-19, zoning text amendment, section 3.11.6, section 3.16, and section 6.11, motor vehicle service uses, town planning and zoning commission applicant.
Mr. Chairman, I'm recusing myself from this, as I stated before at other meetings. Thank you.
Mr. Planner, want to give us a quick,
Sure. This is an amendment that the commission's been working on for, I'd say, probably over a year now. Essentially, what this amendment would do, if adopted, is it would turn the clock back to approximately 2007 and reinstate all the auto-related uses that were allowed back in the day, with a couple of restrictions dealing with the separating distance from a residential zone and garage doors facing the street. But all of the uses would be, once again, be allowed where they had been prior to 2007.
okay. Commissioners, any comments or questions at this point? We we've been working on this for quite some time.
The potential car shows that pop up and around, they don't, I heard storage, so sometimes the guys are there all day. I just want to make sure it
No,
doesn't.
they're good.
Could you, Mr. Planner, address you had sent out a memo recently to the commissioners on new car dealerships why don't we discuss that as far as if this commission wants to allow or not allow them on the Berlin Turnpike or in town at all? I mean, if it's something that we should discuss, if in light of the new car dealership that moved into Berlin, the recent Mirandi Acura that moved into Berlin, we would not want that type of a business on the Berlin Turnpike. I wouldn't see why we wouldn't. So it's something that the commissioner should decide as to whether we want to go in that direction or not. Any comments from the commissioners on new car dealerships on the Commissioner Fox?
I don't know. I'm not sure there's, I don't know whether a difference or can be separated. Most used car dealerships, they have kind of a, bad reputation, especially on the turnpike, and they also have, they also have repair shops. New car dealerships, they would have repair shops too, to change oil or do whatever warranty work is done. And so, I don't know if we can separate them. I'd like to discuss it.
Well, Mr. Planner, why don't you tell us what your thoughts were on why we didn't consider that?
Well, over the course of the year or so we've been working on this, there have been a lot of comments have been made, and I tried to get a sense of whether the thing that Commissioner Camillo says is the consensus or if it was just Commissioner Camillo's idea. And my sense was, no, just picking on you, Mike, but my sense was that at one point in the evolution was that the commission did not want to resume allowing car dealerships on the Berlin Turnpike. And I thought that kind of odd myself because that's kind of where you have your car dealerships. But that was my sense that the commission did not want to resume allowing car dealerships on the Turnpike. But then there was more discussion at a later meeting, and I realized that, no, I misunderstood. There doesn't seem to be a consensus that we should not allow new car dealerships on the Berlin Turnpike. So I'm, as the public, I guess, we're kind of waiting for the commission to decide, after the hearings, I'm sure, whether to resume allowing new car dealerships on the Berlin Turnpike. I assume we can make the distinction. I'd have to go back and read the statutes that define different car dealerships, and Commissioner Camillo is shaking his head, and he knows this business, so maybe I'll just stop talking and let you share your knowledge.
You're going to sell, the new car dealers also sell used cars. New car dealers sell used cars also. They take the trade-ins, they sell them. You're going to tell them they can't sell used cars?
Can we tell them they
It's a motor
have?
vehicle license.
Can we tell them they have to sell new cars? And once they have a license to sell new cars, they can sell used ones also, but they have to at least be licensed to sell new cars. Can we mandate that?
I don't think you can do that. Those
Okay.
are restrictions to when they go to motor vehicles,
Okay,
and that's probably stopped them from
okay.
getting a license.
I can just tell you that the past commissions have looked at the used car dealerships on the Turnpike as a problem because of, if you look in other towns, look in Weathersfield or on the Turnpike or Berlin on the Turnpike, at some of the operations, they didn't want those type of operations in Newington.
Right.
And you know which ones they are. You could drive down the Turnpike in Weathersfield or Newington or Berlin and see what I'm talking about. But I think that's where the commission was coming from. But at this point, I looked at that Acura dealership and I said, well, that would have been nice to have that dealership in the town of Newington for tax purposes and grand list purposes. And there are pieces of property that type of an operation could have moved into or purchased. I think of one is the building right next to 3333 Berlin Turnpike. Commissioner Woods.
Yeah, the question is, do we want to allow new dealerships, right, but not
Well, I don't know if you can make a distinction between the new and the used.
I don't think so.
Can you?
Here, one more thing.
Go ahead, Mike.
The other thing,
Maybe-
10 years ago, when we had this discussion, it was more of the flags and the banners and on the antennas and all that. We didn't want to see that. That's what was said with the prior commissions. So I don't think you'd see that today because we have a zoning enforcement officer that can go, get out there and say, hey, you can't put these on the cars. But I don't think you can just say no to motor vehicle dealerships.
Commissioner Woods.
I guess I don't know why we wouldn't want to allow new dealerships.
Right.
I guess I can understand why we wouldn't want some used car dealerships. Although I think, to be honest with you, the real estate value on the Berlin Turnpike is probably going to exclude most used car dealership, but it doesn't automatically exclude it. But pretty much everybody drives a car in our town. And not exclusively, but we're pretty close. I don't think you would see a vast number of new automotive, but I guess I don't know why we wouldn't want that. It would definitely generate a fair amount of tax revenue. They're big sites that provide a service that most, if not all, of our citizens would use. I guess I would fall back to Mr. Minor, the planner, I don't know if you let one in, they both come. And I get it, because every new dealer sells used cars. I believe they make more money on their used cars than they actually make on their new cars. But
Anthony.
My question is to the planner, and for discussion here also, what you're asking is if you have a new or used, regardless of new or used, the structure and the requirements put on that structure for its use of a new car or used car would still be the same. So really, it's, if you have an example is the Berlin Acura, it's beautiful. You don't see the bays unless you drive up behind it in that residential neighborhood, look down, and you see some of their service bays. So regardless if it's new or used, the building itself would have to meet the same requirements. So I don't see why we'd want to exclude it from this town. I wouldn't want to see one in certain other business zones, but I don't think they're already allowed anyways. Maybe, I don't know, if the industrial manufacturing plant here in town or what's the little plumbing, I call it the plumbing place, right here.
You manufacture.
Yeah, if they were to leave, would you be able to put a?
No.
So that's where I'm going. If we, I wouldn't want to see it there, but if you can't really preclude new or used because they're going to be under the same.
Commissioner Woods and
Rule.
Commissioner Camillo.
I think, though, the way that I'm reading this new regulation, if in fact it goes through, with this 100-foot setback, most of the lots that are deep enough on the Berlin Turnpike actually end up butting up against residential.
Yeah.
So I think while we might want them, this regulation's not going to allow it.
That's interesting. I didn't think of
Right?
it that
I
way.
mean,
Yeah.
There's a fair amount of areas that would work perfectly for an automotive dealership, except for this 100-foot setback. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
We
But
have to
is
think
that-
through.
Go ahead. Yeah.
But does that make someone want to say no to having it on the books?
That's the question. I don't know.
Well,
Well, I think Commissioner Woods went on to a different point, that if we do adopt this more restrictive regulation than used to be on the books, it would reduce the number of future car businesses that could open up in
We're
town,
not making it impossible, but we're making it very, very
reducing the pool of potential sites for new auto businesses.
restricted to the lots that would be available that would meet this on the Berlin Turnpike. I mean, I'm sure there's other places in town, but not many.
but if you have a piece of land on the pike that doesn't have that residential zone property butting up, which is more on the southwest side, like we're say Rizzo Pool and Friendly's, well, it gets a little closer, but
And that,
Friendly's.
if those lots are deep, if you look at them, all on top of that ridge, there's residential houses up there. So depending on whether the residential property comes
okay.
down or the commercial goes back, they abut.
Well, I'm using look at the Ashway, the old Bowlerama there, not bowler, excuse me, the bowling place. Like there's
There's residential.
There's been dealers used in the back.
above Costello.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you would
No,
have,
not Callahan, the other
Yeah,
one south
that's all-
side,
that's all
which is
residential.
Ashley Furniture.
It's all residential above that.
but you would have, Anthony,
Butts it is all the Costello Business Park that's back there.
but you would have like 333 Berlin Turnpike would be one.
Oh, no,
You know, and that would be on the southwest corner, which is what you talk about. You're talking
Southwest, I'm sorry, I was saying
southeast, which is
southeast.
where Friendly's is,
Yeah.
which does a bit.
On that side, but
residential.
let's say you go up
Right.
to the Costello Road, Ashley Furniture, let's say it just mysteriously disappears, that's a prime corner that doesn't have residential behind it.
Correct,
Right.
that one piece.
Well, I'm just,
Yeah.
you-
I
I can ask the IT department to help me put together a map that would show lots that would be prevented from a new car business, auto-related business, an auto-related business newly, if this more restrictive 100-foot setback versus the old 51 were imposed. I'll
but
get that.
does, okay.
Most dealerships today, everything's done online, and they store the cars behind the building for security reasons, behind a fence, and you see them online. They're not like at the curb like we had years ago, where, you know, hey, I saw that car in your lot, and I see it. Oh, I saw it online. Can you have it ready? I'd like to take it for a ride. So you don't have to see that light, so to speak, because you'd see junk, you'd see new cars. It'd be behind the building. So it's just I think you should allow it.
Stan,
Most areas on a turnpike, it's a 300-foot right-of-way, okay?
Yeah.
Now, you're talking in addition to that, say if it was down the middle, 150 feet either side, another 100 feet on top of that, which would be almost ridiculous. If you were to reduce it to 50 feet off the state right-of-way, it would make a little more sense to me, I would think. You know, in the turnpike area. Because now it's too deep and you're not going to see anybody, because you can't put your signs up on state right-of-way. So if you think about that for a minute, and if the middle of the turnpike was 150 feet either side at the widest point, so if you were to take and say, okay, 50 feet from the edge of the state right-of-way back, you're allowed to put a sign up or whatever, it'd be a lot better than going 100 feet back for your building and the sign. I'm just thinking about the visibility. Somebody coming down the road, they're going to be able to see something at least within this zone of sight. But if it's way back there, you can't see, you got to turn your head one way or the other. I'm just thinking maybe 100 feet might be a little ridiculous, maybe 50. I'm just throwing that out there.
You're confusing the two different things. I think you're confusing front yard setbacks with the distance between the zones, commercial zone
Okay.
and the residence zone. I think the 100 feet that we're talking about in this regulations is to differentiate between the commercial zone and the residence zone.
Okay, all right, I stand corrected.
Yeah.
So with that said, the proposed, on page 3 of this, Mr. Minor, 611-4, no display or storage of any motor vehicle is permitted in the required front yard. So that, going back to Commissioner Sobolewski said, that part stems from when you've got the front right-of-way to the state, and then they have to be, you couldn't put a car there then. That's what I'm saying. Like, so if you use the Berlin Acura dealership, the cars sit way back up. I say way back up, not exactly, maybe 150 feet, plus was it 30 feet right away or 50 feet right away?
What, that turnpike is 300
So
foot
from the
right-
center line,
Yeah.
150 feet.
Roughly, yeah, if you
Okay.
wanted, yeah.
So then, if I look at this, if say that dealership was in Newington right now, all those vehicles that sit in front of that dealership are in violation of a potential if we had 611.4. So you're almost, with 611.4, you're almost eliminating any vehicle to be stored in the front of a vehicles for sale location. Who?
But you could work around that. I think what you could do is, in this particular case, you would move the building close to the roads, like you see in Hartford, where the display is actually done inside the building because it's all glass.
Okay.
And then the cars are either on the side or in the back. So I think that's doable. You know, if you want to keep no cars in the front, I think that still works with automotive uses. Like, you can make that happen and make it attractive, so you don't get the cars, so you're not restricting it.
So
I-
any motor, so the language would have to be different.
You'd have to change
You
language,
still have
yeah.
a parking lot in front of there?
Not necessarily. Again, if you
No, I'm saying for customer, where are they gonna park, behind the building?
Or, no, on the side of the building, or the side, or behind the building. But you would push the building closer.
There's ways to get around.
I mean, you can work around that.
That's what Mr. Woods is saying.
I'm trying to make.
Okay, no, I'm trying to visually look at a car
It's
dealership.
impossible to do.
No, I'm trying to think of a car dealership that is around here that has no cars in front of their building.
On, I was just on the street.
Jennings Road, maybe?
No, where the post office is in Hartford, what's the name of that road?
Oh, Murphy.
Jennings Road.
Jennings Road.
Where CarMax is?
Yeah, where CarMax
Yeah,
is.
but all theirs are in front of the
But
building.
they're building a brand-new
Weston
dealership
Street.
down, a Land Rover
Oh, okay.
dealer. You know, there's not gonna be, there's no parking in the front.
Oh, I
The
didn't
building
know.
is
Okay.
almost on the road, it's all landscaped.
And then
Now,
everything's in the back.
there is a driveway, I suppose they could take and block the driveway, you know, with vehicles, but it's meant to be, the vehicles are gonna be either on the side or in the back.
Oh, okay,
Or inside.
gotcha.
Okay, I think we talked enough about it at this point. That's something that we're going to have to take up.
It's a public hearing, isn't it, Mr. Chairman? So
Yeah.
if there's somebody from the public, I'd like to see if there's any input from.
Yeah, we're going to get the input from the public, but as far as this issue, we could revisit it after the public hearing and see if we want to include it as part of this application. Do we have to go keep the public hearing open?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to open it up to the public if the commissioners would allow at this point. Anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor of this application, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and make a presentation.
Attorney Hollister, would you like one to start with?
I have the one you gave me last time. So in my
Just want to make
pocket.
sure.
Thank you.
You're going to have to get used to getting all these things every time now.
Last time he threw it at me while I was speaking.
Well, but you got it, though.
Yeah.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Attorney Tim Hollister. I have a couple of hats on tonight. I'm representing Modern Tire Recapping. Mr. Armenta is here and will also have some things to say. I think you know the background is from 2012 to 2015. I represented several auto-related uses that were concerned about the amendments to the auto use regulations that were adopted in 2012, and I also represent 4 homeowners who butt up against a motor vehicle service use on the Berlin Turnpike and are concerned about particularly about the protections that you have in your draft to protect homeowners. The letter I've just submitted is one you saw about 4 months ago. I just wanted to put it into the record of this hearing, and I'm not going to dwell on it. It's really the background of the Firestone-related litigation. So the good news is I am here to support the draft amendment with a couple of requests for possible clarifications and corrections. And I will say first that I think the provision that says that a motor vehicle service use should not be located within 100 feet of a residential zone is kind of the key protection that you have in the draft and have had in your regulations, and I think that should be maintained. I'm going to make a suggestion, and I haven't vetted this with Craig before, but I will make the suggestion that you also say that the roll-up or overhead doors should not face a residential zone boundary. I say that because the 4 homeowners that I represent, the entire issue is that there are, at the Firestone, there are 5 bays that face the Berlin Turnpike and 5 bays that face 4 homes. And again, we don't have to go over the history of how that was approved, but that's really a practice that should not be allowed. And so I ask you to consider that as a further restriction, which I don't think will affect really anything other than, or certainly nothing in a new use, because there are always options in other locations. A couple of clarifications and corrections. In the first section, it talks about motor vehicle service uses defined as, quote, including but not limited to, and then there are several uses, and then it uses the phrase, and other related uses as may be determined by the commission. I think that second phrase is the one that caused Judge Modelis to say back in 2014 and 2015 that you were reserving too much discretion to yourself. So I think that that second phrase, other related uses as may be determined by the commission, should come out. I don't, because you're retaining the words including but not limited to, I don't think you're closing off things that you want to approve. But I think the message from a couple of years ago was say what you're going to allow and what you're not going to allow, and don't leave it open-ended as that second phrase allows you to do.
Where is that on the?
In the second paragraph before the numbered subparagraphs.
Page 3. Seconded.
Right, that's in 6 point, well, it's in the introductory section of 6.11. So, I would also urge you to take a close look at the terms repair license and limited repair. I think the regulation is written is okay, but maybe this is really more of an enforcement matter to think about. There is a difference between a general repair and a limited repair, and there are a couple of instances in Newington and other towns that I'm aware of where a business gets its zoning approval as a general repair, and then they try to operate under a limited repair. So I'm going to just suggest that if you're going to put that in your regulations, there should be follow-up to make sure that they operate under the license that they represented that they would use in their actual operation. In 6.11.3, there's no definition that I know of the term entrance or exit. I would assume it would not be too hard to...
Mr. Hollister.
Oh, I'm sorry.
1960 just came.
Don't want to miss any.
There's no definition of the term entrance and exit. I would assume that would be located at least or defined at the street line or the end of the public right-of-way. But the question would be, since you're measuring no more than 100 feet from the entrance or the exit, from the street line or the right-of-way to where? And Craig, I don't know if there is a definition, but I think it would be simple to define that, and I think it would make it easier for enforcement. Minor matter in 6.11.3, you have separation distances from school, playground, hospital, residence, and also church. I would suggest in this day and age, you might say religious institution instead of church. Church generally is defined as a Christian-type institution, so just don't want you to get in trouble in some other context. And then lastly, in 6.11.7 and 6.11.8, 14-322 has been repealed by the legislature, and so is 1455. So I think you just need the reference to the first sections, 14-321 and 14-54. Those are the operative sections. So I think if you take a look at those clarifications and corrections that I've outlined, I'm otherwise here to support your efforts, and I appreciate them. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
You've written down and we'll discuss them as part of our commission discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this amendment from the commission? Anyone else in favor? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Robert Amenta, 3455 Berlin Turnpike, Modern Tire. I'm in favor of the regulations. I think it's a good idea to bring automotive uses back to Newington on the Berlin Turnpike and elsewhere within town. However, I do have several concerns because of the length of time that we have been trying to address this and the way that some of the regulations are written. So I'm just going to go through the items of concern that I have so I can bring them to your attention. Hopefully they can be addressed. Number one, I do agree with having dealerships allowed in town, both new and used dealerships. I think it's very important that the commissioners look at the general statutes 14-51 because there are 4 different sections in there. There's new car dealer, there's used car dealer, there's repairer, and there's limited repair. So it's important to understand those when we're referencing those within the regulations. I would like to see the regulations specifically and clearly state that new car and used car dealers are allowed as automotive uses, so that there is no gray area in regards to that. In 6.11.2, it states that repairs shall be entirely within a building and at least 30 feet from any street line. Well, we're in a tire business, automotive service business, and on occasion we'll have people pull up. They need a spare tire change, the bays are full, we change the spare tire. They need a battery put in or wiper blades put on, minor services that we might do outside. I think that it is entirely within the realm of allowing us to do that, that should be in the regulations. And further, as an example, automotive retail stores that are not regulated by the Department of Motor Vehicles, like AutoZone, Advanced Auto Parts, O'Reilly's that's coming on the Turnpike, they will go out in your parking lot, they will install a battery, they will install wiper blades, headlights, and there's even been customers that buy starters and try to install them outside in the parking lot on their own. So we as licensed automotive dealers that are regulated by the state should have the right to do simple minor repairs. We're not going to do a brake job out in our lot. We just want to be able to replace a headlight, replace a wiper blade, put a spare tire on.
Good point.
Tim touched on some items like the entrances and exits. I just was curious where that was defined, but he already touched on that. Display or storage of motor vehicles is permitted in the required front yard. It's saying that it's not permitted. If dealerships are allowed, I think there needs to be a definition of that front yard, and that's going to have to be addressed. You guys were discussing it in regards to would displays be allowed. I think they should be allowed, but I think that they should be pretty strict in regards to how they're displayed. You know, no open hoods with the for sale signs in there, no maybe crayon markings on the windows, no flyers. There's professional businesses that are beautiful dealerships, just like the one down in Berlin that could have easily been in Newington, that I think you would be proud to have, and that would be beneficial for the town, provide a good tax base, as long as it's properly regulated. So I don't think a used car dealer is a bad thing. I just think if it's done right, it could be a good thing, as well as new car dealers. Okay. Overhead service doors. So, as you know, Modern Tire has a lot of overhead service doors facing the street. Turnpike Motors has a lot of overhead service doors facing the street. One thing that the town planner mentioned in his memo was the only ones that he was aware of that were facing the street was Firestone on the Berlin Turnpike and Enterprise on the Berlin Turnpike. And all I could think of is those two might be ones that kind of aren't approved or didn't submit applications to have the doors on the Turnpike. But we have doors, Modern Tire, Turnpike Motors had doors, PC Richards has doors facing the street, and Best Buy has doors facing the street. So there's a lot of doors facing the street. My concern as an operator that's been in town for years and years is that if I want to add on to my building, I don't want to have to come in here and say, okay, we want to add on, and we're fine with not adding any more front bay doors, but I don't want to come to the commission and say, oh, now that you're here, you can add on as long as you close up all your front doors and enter from the back. I think there should be something in the regulations that would state that the existing doors that are on properties that have been improved can maintain the numbers of doors that they have, but they can't increase them. So that way I would be able to do some sort of modification to my property, add on. I wouldn't add any more bay doors to the front, but I would like to keep the doors that I have. It's being repealed, you addressed that. Another question I have is, if there were a deep piece of property, say it had 2 parcels on it, and it was a long piece of property, and the back property was going to be used as automotive, and the front property was commercial. If the back property is automotive, and the front parcel is commercial, and then there's a street, the doors facing that commercial property that's in front of it, would that be considered facing the street If a building was there, I think maybe not, but what if the back parcel was developed first and then the front parcel was developed later? The doors would be facing the street, but how would that be construed? So,
You got
I'd
that,
like to
Mr. Planner? Go ahead.
yeah, if that could be kind of clarified. Let's see, last slide. And then lastly, Attorney Hollister had mentioned the 1432 was repealed, but also in 6.118, it states that the Newington Zoning Commission is the one that actually should be the board that approves the citing, not the Board of Appeals, if you read those regulations. And I think it's backwards now, because it talks about a town of no less than 20,000 or a town of less than 20,000. So you just got to kind of maybe read that a few different times to make sure that those references are accurate. But I wholeheartedly would like to see the regulations brought back, but I'd like to see it done properly. And that way, going forward in the future, once these do get back into regulations, it'll be clear for all parties. All parties will be on a level playing field. Anybody that wants to come into town will know exactly what the regulations are, and me as a property owner will know what I can and can't do in the future to invest in my property. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application, please come forward, state your name and address.
Good evening, Doug Fernandez, 2550 Berlin Turnpike, Turnpike Motors Auto Body. So I'm in support of what Bob and Tim have just presented. I want to just show my support to you all, so I won't go back over a lot of that stuff. But I think there's two things to consider here. One is the storage piece that's in place on 6.11.4. If I'm reading this correctly, this would prevent just overnight storage and things of that nature, which is a service we offer our customers right now. So if you want to drop your car off at 8 o'clock at night for us to have it, 8 o'clock in the morning, those cars are being stored currently in our front parking lot, as well as in some cases rental cars that are planted for the night before to be picked up. So I don't know if that requires further definition or not, for the purposes of, what storage actually consists of.
I don't think that we're worth looking at it that way, Doug, that we're saying that you couldn't do what you're doing. I mean, that's part of your business. I think this is more like long-term storage that we're talking about, where cars are there for an enormous amount of time, not being moved, and some of them are junked, or that's what we're talking about, right, Craig?
I think so.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we wouldn't be talking about the guy that brings the car at night and drops it off and leaves it in front, and then the next morning you start working on it. No,
Sure.
that's not what,
Okay.
if we'll look at it and see if we could clarify it a little
Yep.
bit.
So secondly, I have the garage bay door challenge as well, right? So we have 3 streets around our property, and so right now we're in this questionable sort of compliance piece. So, in the end of this, we're a business that's been in town. It'll be 50 years this coming May, and I want to be able to sort of do what we can do with the property as we go forward, as things and times change. As far as the new car and used car conversations that you guys had before, the world is changing, right? There's a lot of different distribution models. CarMax is a very significant used car distribution model. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want that somewhere on the Berlin Turnpike in Newington, right? They do a wonderful job. You have Carvana, new distribution model. You have distribution models like Tesla, who's trying to put, although they're challenged with Connecticut right now, right? Who's to say that they're not going to need some sort of a pickup location or something of that nature going forward? So I think, we have to keep I know, just listening to the commission, I know it's damaged a little bit, right, by what goes on down the end of the Berlin Turnpike, and some of these places don't look good, and they don't, they look like used car places when you say the word used car places. But, those are old business models, and, we're in a very changing time, and there's a viable business there, and entrepreneurs and people who want to go forward, they want to be in places that are progressive, and I think Newington should be that type of place with definition, with quality, with clean operations. I think we run a pretty clean operation. I think Bob runs a pretty clean operation. There are people out there who do it right and, participate and contribute to the community. So I think we got to be careful about eliminating them from being part of this community going forward.
You know that we're not, the properties like yours and Modern Tire, where you exist now with doors facing the street, that, we're not coming out with this regulation telling you got to do something about that. You're going to be in, I don't want to say the word grandfather because I don't believe that but you will be, you won't be affected by the new regulation. We don't go backwards and tell people, we're not going backwards and say, you got to now all of a sudden comply with this new regulation. You're there, you're operating, and that's the way it's going to be. I mean, you're just going to be, you're going to be non-conforming to the new regulations, but you're conforming to what was approved by this commission at some point in time.
Yeah, so we have a long history in the automotive business, right? So as the automotive industry changes, which we know it's going to, technology is changing, there's going to be different things that happen. We just have to make sure these regulations allow the people who have been there to change and be able to go forward. If that's an infrastructure change or whatever, or not, some sort of an operation change that is a trend of the way the industry is going. And I mean industry as automotive, generally speaking. So just keep sort of that piece in mind, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, great.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time, please come forward.
Hi. Good evening, Commission members. My name is Amy Suchins. I'm representing Guggenheim Retail Real Estate Partners, which I think, as you all know, is the owner of 2897 Berlin Turnpike, which is where the Firestone is located. So we're obviously interested as the owner of property with an automotive use on it. And as I think to start, we're having sat through your deliberations and discussions over the last 6 months or so. The theme that I heard from all of you, as Mr. Minor noted at the beginning, is that what you're trying to do is turn back the clock and bring as many businesses in Newington back into conformity with the regulations and allow them to continue their successful operation. And I think there, as you've already heard from Attorney Hollister, Mr. Amenta, and Mr. Fernandez, that there are some issues with the regulations. I have a couple of different comments, one of which you started to talk about before, about the sales, and then also some comments, I think a little bit on what Craig was going to ask the IT department about properties that may be affected by some of the proposed changes to the regulations. So with respect to the draft, I just want to walk through a couple of things quickly. As it says at various points, it allows service, sale, repair, rental, and storage of motor vehicles. And yet, when you go into the definitions, I think as Attorney Hollister first noted, the motor vehicle service use and the reference to repairs and limited repairs doesn't necessarily address the situation of dealers, whether new or used. So what I wanted to hand out was, I did print out a copy from the Department of Motor Vehicles registration list. So this obviously only deals with the businesses that are registered or licensed by the state of Connecticut. It doesn't deal with something like a gas station or a car wash, for example. And what I wanted to point out here was simply why the difference in the inclusion of new and used dealers in the definition to include repairs and limited repairs is important, because as you'll see at the bottom of the page, the vast majority of the automotive businesses in Newington are licensed as used dealers, not as repairers. Mr. Amenta's business is obviously listed, Modern Tire is listed as a general repairer, as is Firestone, and the Turnpike Motors is actually one of the used dealers. So that's why the distinction is important, because when you read the sections of the regulations and the existing definition of motor vehicle service use, I think there's an argument that a number of these provisions wouldn't apply to somebody, to an entity that's holding a dealer license, because it would only include repairs and limited repairs. So for example, with respect to section 611.2, where it says motor vehicle service uses, which include repairs, that would arguably, if you were a dealer, wouldn't be covered by that, because the definition does not specifically include somebody who's licensed a dealer. It's only referencing repairs and limited repairs. Same thing with respect to 611.3, and I think both of those, I think your intent is to have all of these types of businesses fall within the purview of these regulations. So I think that clarification is important. The one other thing that I just wanted to note, with respect to that introductory language, I do agree with Attorney Hollister that the last provision in that definition where it says, and other related uses as may be determined by the commission, is probably not recommended in light of exactly what he said, Judge Modelisa's earlier decision, and just general Connecticut law on the subject. And then also with respect to 611.6, which is the overhead service doors, again, that's another provision where it says that they wouldn't be permitted on the public street side of a motor vehicle service use. So I'll turn to some of the photos that I have to illustrate why these distinctions are important, and why some of the recommendations, or excuse me, some of the things I would like to encourage you to revisit are relevant to the to those issues. So.
All this homework you people are giving us.
Oh, I will.
So just briefly, as Mr. Fernandez noted, and Mr. Armenta, I think actually too, noted that Mr. Minor's report only referenced 2 properties that had overhead doors facing the street, the Firestone and the Enterprise. In fact, there are several more automotive businesses in Newington where they have doors facing the street. What I provided to you is just a Google Street View of a number of the properties where there is a overhead bay door facing the street. Firestone property, Modern Tire, Payne Road Complex, which is Commissioner Payne's property, also included. Turnpike Motors, which also has, and I provided both the photo from the Berlin Turnpike, and as he noted in his comments, the backside of the property on Ann Street also has doors facing the street. And that is one of the properties that would also be affected, because the existing draft of the regulation only includes the reference to limited repairs or repairs as a used dealer. If that regulation wasn't amended, theoretically his doors would be entirely conforming under the regulations, but the Firestone or the Modern Tire doors would not. And then just there are a few more: B&D Automotive, Nino's Import, S&S Automotive, and then the last 2, Lada Motors and ABC Auto, also have the same issue where they are licensed as used dealers rather than repairs, and so those doors would theoretically be allowed if the regulations weren't amended to include dealers. And then H.O. Penn has their loading dock that faces the street, and then there are 2 car washes that I saw on the saw in town: the Shell station at 293 Main Street and the Mr. Sparkle on Payne Road, right next to right down the street from Mr. Payne's property. So what I would encourage the commission to do is that if it is in fact trying to bring more businesses into conformity with the regulations, would be to eliminate that recommendation that doors cannot face the street. I think, as I heard from your earlier discussion, there are probably many other ways to address this, whether it's landscaping, as you see on the property, or requiring the doors to be closed. But ultimately, if the goal is to try and bring more businesses into conformity with the regulations, I just wanted to provide you some examples where maintaining that prohibition does affect a number of other properties beyond those that had been listed in the staff report. And then the same thing with the prohibition on the proximity to the residential zone. As Mr. Woods noted, if, again, as a number of the properties on the Berlin Turnpike, including my client's property, are adjacent to residential zones, there are other mechanisms that are in place that would allow those issues to be addressed. We have to keep the doors closed. We had agreed to that even before any of the litigation began, and is something that could certainly be addressed by a means other than a prohibition on their location. In addition to my client's property, the Enterprise has doors, both a door that faces a residential zone and is within close proximity to a residential zone, and then the S&S Auto property at the corner of New Britain Avenue, and I believe it was Maple, is also both doors facing the street and proximity to a residential zone. There are, if you just think about the Berlin Turnpike, there are a whole host of other properties that, may be grandfathered non-conforming, but again, if you're looking at trying to allow these businesses to think about their future, potential expansion plans, sometimes it becomes an issue with financing. The Sam's Club gas station is adjacent to a residential zone. The Walmart tire facility is adjacent to a residential zone in the back. East PBE, which is also adjacent to residential property on Church Terrace. There are a number of gas stations along the Turnpike that are adjacent to residential zones. Citgo, Express Fuel, and Shell. On Willard Avenue, there's a Phillips 66 and car wash that's in close proximity to the residential zone. Another Citgo at Cedar and Alumni. And what I found is Jay's Bubble Bath and Detailing, which is on Spring Street off of Willard, is pretty much smack in the middle of a residential zone. So those are, again, some examples, not intended to be an exhaustive list, but wanted to point out to you that there are a number of businesses that if you maintain the prohibition on proximity to a residential zone, would remain either non-conforming and potentially be limited in their ability to expand or operate depending on the nature of their businesses. So with that, if you have any questions, but otherwise I would urge you to, we think that the changes are good in bringing the businesses into conformity and allowing them to operate is a positive move for the commission. We would just urge the elimination of the ban on the overhead doors and the proximity to the residential zone.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone else? Anyone else here that came here for the automotive use, other than people that already spoke? Is there anyone? Just the people that are here? Okay. You sent out letters to...
Yes, to all, and I got a couple of calls, people wanting more information about it.
Okay. I just want to make sure that the automotive businesses are aware of us making this change, and we've reached out to all of the businesses. I think we sent letters to them all, so I'm just surprised that not more people have come out to weigh in on this issue, because it does affect their business. Okay. At this point, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Anyone in opposition? Okay, seeing none. Commissioner remarks at this time? Commissioner Sobieski.
Yes, looking at some of the pictures Attorney Sushin showed, B&D used to be an old gas station. There was no Esso station in the center in the town there.
Mm-hmm.
That was built many, many years ago. Looking at the Sunoco station at the corner of 174 and Maple Avenue, that used to be an old Gulf station. That's been in place for many years. Land Motors, again, was another old gas station. It was on Hartford Avenue. And my point that I'm bringing out here is that these have been here for years. It's not something that's brand new. It's not something that we put in here. And as been stated before, this with the overhead doors would not affect the existing buildings here. It would just be new buildings. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. So that's what I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Any other commissioner remarks? Commissioner Wood?
Does it make those buildings non-conforming?
Yes, right, but,
It does affect them.
well, it affects them, but I'll use the word that the chairman didn't want to, but they're grandfathered. They'll be able to continue to do that forever. We'll
doesn't-
never go after them and make them shut down.
But it does affect them.
It does, it makes them stop and think, now, will I be able to expand the way I want to? No, I won't be able to expand the way I want to because I won't be able to put a door there, but, so in that sense, it affects them, yeah.
Commissioner Claffey?
So it will affect potential current businesses that thrive in this community as some of the pros for the change or that comment. But are we making it so tight that when those companies want to make changes in their structures or their business, are we too tight? So that then they say, you know what, I can't expand in Newington because of the sign of the times and business changes, and I'm going to seek somewhere else. If we make them too
Well, the
hard,
only thing
because
that-
they'd be getting more in non-compliance, but
The only two things that we'd be talking about is the overhead doors and the distance to a residence zone. Those are the two things that were restricted.
well, that's my point.
When you say too restrictive, there aren't any other things, just the two things.
so how does an auto-related use, I'm not going to bring any of the three big ones, we all know the three big auto-related uses on the Pike, 2 or 3 of them stood here today. That business thrives on getting vehicles in and out of a structure. And my point is to add on to the building, to make it bigger, usually entails more bays. Is this not gonna tighten up that person that might, even though it might be in the back of the property, might,
If it's in the back of the property, it wouldn't be facing the street, so,
you have some here that do face the street,
which they are allowed to.
but they can't
exist.
expand on that.
No, they cannot.
Okay, so
Well-
you would be becoming more,
Well, they can expand. I think Mr. Menta gave a good example. He could come in tomorrow and ask for site plan approval for additional bays on his existing building, but those bays would have to face the side or the back. They couldn't face the street.
If you carry that, go ahead and use Turnpike Motors, they're surrounded by streets. Ann Street, and I think there's a paper street that actually runs kind of between them. It's a dirt road that's probably still owned by the town, so it's a street. There's a street in the back and the Berlin Turnpike in the front, so that would restrict them. It's pretty hard to add doors when you have a street in every direction. Now, that's probably the exception to the rule, but it's there.
but then, look at the pictures on some of these, I'm just using them as example. I mean, I think it's a point of discussion of not making it so non-conforming that they just say, you know what, we're packing up, we're going somewhere else. That's gonna happen to some business in town. If you make something so hard to do business, forget it, we'll leave.
Mr. Woods?
Yeah, Mr. I think we could stay on this for probably 4 nights, not all night. But what my point is, I think there was a lot of good recommendations that the planner and we listened to, that we can make some adjustments to this, and we come back at the next meeting and have some time to really think this thing through, to try to get it right.
At this point, any other commissioner comments? Okay. At this point, we're gonna not close this hearing, we're gonna leave the public hearing open, and we'll just bring it back up at the next meeting, see if any other people come out, and if not, we'll we'll have enough time for the planner to go over all of the comments that were made by the people that commented tonight.
Okay, now, I think you're going to want me to summarize the comments, but you don't want me to start tweaking the amendment on the fly, do you? Okay.
Summarize it, and we'll have a discussion as far as, that's the way we want to proceed, right?
Okay.
I think
good.
some of the comments, Mr. Chairman, like the church, I think that should go to religious institutions, or,
Okay.
There's some
Okay.
things
Some
that
of the
should be
stuff,
changed.
you
Yeah.
got to use your own
Okay.
discretion.
Not actually
and make-
regulations, but just some of the wording,
Understood.
Okay, so that ends that particular item. We're on to the next item, which is petition 0419. You want to read that?
Yes,
for me,
sir.
please?
Public hearing, item B, petition 04-19, special permit, section 3.11.6, restaurant at 2184 Berlin Turnpike, Bianca Real Estate LLC, owner Melissa Terracani, applicant Anthony Terracani, 230 Jubilee Street, New Britain, Connecticut. Contact.
Is the applicant here? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and make your presentation.
Anthony Terracani, 230 Jubilee Street, New Britain, Connecticut.
It's right here.
There's a revised staff memo that was in the folder when you arrived tonight regarding the parking calculation.
Is there a, you may just turn, it might be answering my own question. Oh, QSH.
Okay, you can go ahead and proceed.
Back in January, put an application for Tony Baloney's deli, Italian deli / restaurant. I was told it was 2184 Berlin Turnpike, but at some point, 2184 and 2186 became one, and 2184 was pushed to the side. Well, the landlord now spoke to somebody down the town here, and for the record, the revised address is 2190 for the whole building, but we're in Suite 4. Looking to do, not franchised, not corporate, it's family-owned, been in the business forever. I previously had another Tony Baloney's on the Turnpike back in the day, and went through some personal stuff at home and got a divorce, and the business had to go. So my health fell apart for a while. I'm back in shape here, what I need to do. I've worked feverishly with Andrew. This has been since January. Unfortunately, last meeting was called because of snow that we never got, but that's beyond everyone else's control. We meet, it's zoned properly. We have appropriate parking. We have everything we need. If anybody would like to see, I have plans of what the interior will look like. I've spoke to the fire marshal, Chris. I've done all my due diligence, and we meet all the criteria, and, just asking for a simple yes that I can move forward. I know at this point then we have to work with the building department and things like that, but those will be the contractors I hire to move forward to assemble this in a timely fashion, because, as I said, this is back to January, but it's not anybody's fault related to the weather and things like that. So if anybody has any questions, I have some menus, I have some layouts. If anyone wants to see the design, the plan, anybody just let me know. But
How many plans you got there?
actually, I have 8.
Give them, pass them out.
Sure.
Let them look at it so that if there's any questions. Craig, what about signage?
Oh, he hasn't asked for signage yet.
Okay.
Freestanding sign, he hasn't asked.
Lighted sign boxes are, It was 2184 and 86 became 2186, as I told you previously. And there's lighted signs above each individual
Put an
thing.
insert in there with your name on it.
It's just gonna, I'll get the design from the sign person and come down, but it's just gonna be a change of insert.
Okay, so at this point, that
Right, wall signs don't come before the commission, those are staff approval. Only freestanding
work
and
that out
temporary
with the
signs.
staff as
Yeah,
far as what
yeah, it's not an issue. I already have somebody that's working on, they took the dimensions of things, I'll bring it to the town, of course, and get the approval, but, anything that needs to be done, but like I said, everything is meets the criteria. I've been working with Andrew, and he's pretty,
There was a question at one point about the parking. I think that through this memo that you sent out, that we've come up with a solution. I know the other tenant in there is not a high-use tenant, so I think with the solution that the planner came up with makes the property workable. Anything else that you see is, any commissioner comments?
Can you explain the parking?
Right.
And how we,
Right.
the hot topic?
Sure, right. When Andrew originally went out to inspect the property and determine whether there's enough parking given the existing tenants and the proposed use, he came back and told me that the rest of the building being retail, that there's not enough parking. So we looked at it a couple of different ways, and it was brought to our attention that one of the tenants is a pawn shop. And at the back of I think I just lost, okay. And at the back of the pawn shop where they store a lot of inventory, that inventory doesn't move very quickly. It's not like a auto parts store where the parts come and go a lot. Some of those pieces stay there for a couple of years. And prorating the amount of parking required by treating the back portion as warehouse, it's probably a reasonable way to approach it. And so that's what the staff is recommending, is that we calculate the amount of required parking on the basis of a mix of retail and warehousing. And that's all in the memo that I distributed tonight.
So how
For
did
the
we come out?
calculations that, to accommodate it because of the low use of the pawn shop, we've been able to allow them to use the parking will now suffice for the restaurant.
Are all the units occupied there currently, other than the one in discussion?
as I said earlier, the two that was put into one, the 2086 now is back to 4 individual. The pawn shop's in use. Scarlett is open, but she's not open. She does eyelashes and things, and by appointment only, so they're only open. I've been up there and very rarely see her open, but next to myself, in between the pawn shop, and I'm gonna have the end unit, they're in there, shouldn't say building, but they're preparing to open up, and I don't know if the commission's aware of this or not, and I'm not, trying to create any problems, but, it's gonna be a vape shop, like another, just like, they sell all the stuff, all the funny stuff.
Yeah, gotcha.
Which I need to go no further, so.
Like the old Stairway to
That's
Heaven.
not something
Yeah, the old stairway, yeah.
That's not something that we would regulate as,
It's retail.
It's retail. I think the planner came up with a solution that we've used before. I've suggested in other properties that we've used this method before where part of it was warehousing and we were able to reduce the parking. So this is nothing new that we're doing specifically special for you.
Well,
Okay,
yes,
so,
and
it's something that this commission has done in the past, and I'm recommending that we allow it here.
Can I just ask one more question? Based on the floor plan and the use, how many spaces, if you just looked at this plan, not the other 3 units, but are we looking, I counted 36 spaces.
Okay, if you flip,
Yeah, so it's just a seating area to give a calculation what would it?
right, if you turn to the second page of the memo that was here when you came in tonight, the new memo that was in the folder when you sat down tonight, the second page, the top bullet, I'll wait for you to get to it. Yeah,
13 spaces.
okay.
I think it's,
the
that
re-
memo explains exactly what the planner had came up with and how he calculated it and how it works.
Right, I'll read it. Okay, the restaurant, there's 1,450 square feet of the amount of space being rented is 1,450 square feet, but the amount that's open to the public is only 650 square feet, and that generates the requirement for 13 spaces. What we did is we took the floor plan, which is in your packet, and literally drew a box around the public area, calculated how much, and came to the 650 square feet figure.
Any other questions, Anthony? Do you understand what we were trying to accomplish?
No, because I'm counting how many spaces are on this memo to how many spaces I just counted, and they equal out. And it doesn't look like this drawing was modified.
No, that wasn't. The floor plan.
Counted 39
No.
spaces.
The floor plan.
I understand that. So I just counted 39 spaces here and mysteriously come up with 39 spaces in your memo.
And that's how many they need. They need 39. They need 13 for the new restaurant and 26 for the remaining building, some of which is warehouse and some of which is retail.
So if it wasn't a restaurant, would you need more or less if it was a vacant?
Probably less. If it was just a conventional retail, there probably would not have been any problem. The problem is restaurants usually require more parking than the same size retail.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners on this application? Okay, we're going to open it up to the public, and then we'll have a discussion. So just sit down now. Let's, yeah. Anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this application, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, anyone in opposition? Seeing none, commissioners, I'd like to close this application and move it to old business for action.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any questions on my request for bringing it to old business?
No.
None? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll act on this tonight, Mr. Planner. So put that on the agenda. Thank you. So we're going to, if you want to stick around, we're going to act on this application tonight, so you have an answer tonight. You want to read item C?
Yeah, I'll get
0519.
Petition, C, petition 05-19, special permit, section 6.2.4, freestanding sign at 3443 Berlin Turnpike, Garrett Homes LLC, owner, C plus sign service, applicant, David Hemming, 500 Industrial Park Road, Deep River, Connecticut, contact.
The applicant here? Yes. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and make your presentation.
All right, my name is Sam Mashad, and I represent Connecticut Sign Service, and we're working on the O'Reilly at 3443 on the Turnpike.
Okay, you have something for the commission to look at?
I only have 3 copies printed out. I thought my boss had sent some over.
They're in the packet, and I'm sorry, but the computer crashed on me, so I can't display them, but they're in the packet.
You looked at the location of this, Mr. Planner?
Yes, and if you look at...
No sightline problems? Doesn't appear to be.
Well, it's where, correct, there shouldn't be any sightline problems where it is on the side of the parking lot.
Sign is, meets the regulation as far as
Yes,
heights and everything else?
correct.
Okay, you have anything to add other than what's presented to the commission?
I do not.
Okay. Mr. Claffey?
Is this picture here, if you're looking at the building, it's between the Olympia Diner and
Yes.
said property?
Right.
Okay.
Any commissioner remarks? Okay, you could sit down and we'll ask the public to weigh in on this. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Okay, seeing none. Commissioners, I'd like to close the application.
So moved.
Second.
Move into old business for action tonight.
I second that.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll put that on and get that moved tonight too. That ends the public portion of the agenda. We'll go into the next portion of the agenda, which is new business petition 0619. Is that ready? The applicant here? This is for Holmes Road.
94 Holmes Road.
Okay, you want to just read the application real quick?
New business, A, petition 0619, site plan modification at 94 Holmes Road LLC. Owner applicant James P. Cassidy, P.E., 630 Main Street, Cromwell, Connecticut. Contact.
Craig, is your video system down?
No, sorry.
Okay. Sorry.
They gone through the Conservation Commission?
They're in front of the commission now, so you cannot act tonight.
Where would the commission prefer I set up, back here or up there?
What do you got?
3 boards.
I think over here, so that the commission could see and the public can see, probably over here. Where do we normally do it, correct?
Usually display on this monitor.
Yeah.
Back in the day, we would
That corner
usually
over
put them
there.
here or there. I think the applicants have used both, depending on how much they wanted the public to be able to see, I think.
Set up there?
Yeah, that's fine. Sure. As long as the commission could get a real good look at it.
What's this right here?
So, good evening for the record. Can we get pick up the mic?
Grab one. You can just hold it.
Good evening for the record. My name is Jim Cassidy. I'm a professional engineer and principal with the firm of Halsey, Pearson and Cassidy, located at 630 Main Street in Cromwell. I'm here tonight representing 94 Holmes Road LLC, who's the property owner of a piece of land located at 94 Holmes Road. The site itself is if you know Holmes Road or Holmes Road Industrial Park, it's located about 3/4 of the way down on the road. On the north side, this being Holmes Road, on the left, so it's on the northerly side of the road. The site itself is about 1.46 acres, is zoned industrial. It contains an existing building with a footprint of a little over 16,000 square feet. It's presently home of John Michael Associates. John Michael Associates is a warehouse distributor of custom sporting apparels. To the north is the Fenwick Estates. It's a open space subdivision that's off to the north. To the west is another industrial building located at 84 Holmes Road. And then to the east is another industrial building. It seems to be some kind of a oil distribution company off on the easterly side there. Presently, parking on the site is located primarily to the south or to the front. In addition to down on the easterly side, there's some additional parking. Presently, there's a total of 44 spaces, 2 of them being handicapped, the 2 handicapped spaces being located in this area here. This other big loop area is presently a turnout area for tractor trailers because there's a loading dock on the easterly side of the building. The site basically slopes downwards to a low spot where all the water goes into the existing drainage system, then continues down through a 24-inch pipe that actually traverses the property at the southeasterly corner, which is in an easement, and then continues down this property line, eventually going out to the east past past the railroad tracks and then discharging to a pond on the other side of the railroad tracks. What we're here before you this evening is we're seeking site plan approval because John Michaels Associates is looking to add some additional space, some warehousing space to this building. The light brown rectangle is the footprint of the existing building, consisting of, again, slightly over 16,000 square feet. They have a need for about additional 10,000 square feet. So what we're looking at doing is taking that existing turnout area, constructing this new addition, and then relocating the loading doors that are over here off to this side of the building. In addition to, we'd be reconfiguring the parking lot. The dark gray area would be the existing parking lot that would remain. We would have 2 new aisles for 2 docks. These 2 docks would be drop docks in that the elevation is 4 feet lower than the floor of the building. This smaller vehicle here would be a level dock, so the grade of the driveway would be the same elevation of the floor. We would then reconfigure these parking spaces, providing 6 parking spaces. Overall, there would be a reduction of number of parking spaces. Being a warehouse and distribution use, their maximum number of employees during the max shift is 36. So we are proposing a total of 36 parking spaces. Would also be locating the 2 existing handicap spaces that are in this location, and then bringing them over to the front of the building, making them ADA compliant. We are presently before the Wetlands Commission. Initially, we didn't think we had to go, but there is a large wetlands area off to the northwest corner. So we do have the existing building and a part of that existing turnout area that's within 100 feet of that wetlands. The proposed addition would be within 100 feet of that wetlands, therefore requiring us to go to the Wetlands Board for approval. For drainage, along the back, we're proposing to build a bioretention swale. This bioretention swale will pick up all the roof leaders for the new building, would discharge into the bioretention swale, and at the far easterly end of it, there's going to be an outlet structure that would collect the overflow from it and then discharge into the same drainage system we talked before. In addition to, we're looking at building a small bioretention basin up at this front corner, which would pick up this new loading dock area. So I know the commission can't take any action on this tonight, but the primary reason that we came before you is that as part of the staff review, one of the items that came out that we wanted to talk about is the location of the loading docks and the loading dock doors. Sure.
We just talked about the overhead doors and loading areas facing the street, and that this one does do that.
So,
Is that what you said in your memo?
Well, this is different. This is, well, could you let Mr. Cassidy finish, and then we can go into get in the weeds on it.
So under your regulations, under 6.1.2, for off-street loading requirements, Section C states loading dock and overhead doors shall not be located on the front wall of the building facing the public road. What the thought was, number one, to be able to add an addition to the building, the only place you really can add it is where that existing turnout is. The other thought is that we foresee this, or we interpreted this as the front wall of the building facing the road. We set this up in a manner so this wall of the building is 75 feet back from the road. So it's not really it faces the road, but it's not really the front wall of the building. We've also tried to set it up a way where if you look at the existing site, this is all one big bituminous area that comes to that loadout area. We're actually introducing 2 islands at the front section of it with landscaping and with some canopy trees to help screen this area a little bit more than it is today. The other advantage we see is that by situating this addition like this is a residential district to the rear. So it brings all the everyday operations of the loading and unloading of the trucks away from that residential use. It actually screens it, makes it a lot quieter than it is today. The other thing we would know, and I know, past practices don't make it right, but we're in a development along Holmes Road Industrial Park that was set up in a manner where more than 50% of the buildings in that park have loading doors that face the road.
This being Holmes Road coming down, every building that you see with a yellow arrow in front of it is a building that presently has a loading dock. We'll say as it faces the road, but it's not on the front wall of the building. So especially, obviously the one across the street, the old Sears Distribution Center, has a massive amount of doors that face the road. Will be very similar to the buildings at 60 and 68. We're here at 94, but they also have their loading docks, so they are set about 75 feet back from that front wall of the building. So we wanted to come before you tonight, before we go back to wetlands next Wednesday, to see how the commission interprets the regulation, and are we basically headed down the right road, or do we need to reconsider and figure a way to redesign, if even possible, to be allowed them to do their expansion of this building. With that, I'm going to conclude, and I'll gladly answer any questions you may have.
Is that what you said in the memo? That's basically it. So that was the point that I was trying to make, is that it does face the road. But the points that you bring up, I think, might negate that. I'm going to leave it up to the commissioners to discuss it. Commissioner Claffey.
I have a question on the truck turnout. How are you going to get that truck, which used to turn around on your property, is it still going to be able to cut and make that turn?
It's designed so it'd be able to pull into this section, back into the loading dock, and then pull straight it back out into the road.
Okay.
Good. No. Any other commissioner comments? What do you think about his rationale as to why, how he set the building back, and some of the items that he brought up have had an actual good effect on the property, because it does screen it from the residence zone. And the regulations specifically talk about the front face of the building. And this is set back 75 feet.
I have a question. Are there any lots in that, don't laugh, but you know me. Any lots left in that?
Laugh now and get it over with.
Any lots in that are, I know it's an industrial zone, but have any residential use now? Like, take Spring Street off Willard, you have industrial, you have commercial, but then you have a house. Okay, it's all homes.
Definitely zoned industrial. I doubt there are any non-conforming residential uses there.
That's the question.
I don't know,
Okay.
but I doubt it.
Okay,
There are none.
I know there are, the backside is the.
Right,
okay.
up in
Yeah,
here
so-
is the closest residence.
Okay.
Commissioner Payne.
Yep. I think what the applicant has explained everything pretty clearly, and being a total industrial area, I don't have a problem with it. And maybe this 6.12C needs to be looked at a little clearer, because if I remember correctly, we approved a building not too long ago, a small little industrial building for somebody, and the doors were facing the road. So, I mean, we have a lot of small lots in Newington, and it's hard to not have doors facing the road. So maybe, I don't have a problem with it at this property, and maybe the commission needs to look at that for the future. Thank you.
But at this particular time, I think with the clarifications that the engineer brought forward tonight, sort of negates us being hard-nosed about it. I would not like to see this particular business or any business not be able to expand because of that particular item, and then have to move out of town and look at some other piece of property, and we lose a good industrial use. Commissioner Woods.
The way to handle this be a simple text amendment for industrial zones to allow doors facing the. I mean, I don't have any problem with it at all, but is that the easier way to do it, and then it's not gray at all?
Mr. Planner, on this particular one, could we proceed without doing text amendments based on the information that we got tonight?
Yes.
Is it something that the commission has authority to
Right, it's your regulation, so it's for you to interpret. And Mr. Cassidy has suggested that where it says shall not be located on the front side of the building, well, he's made a case for
That it's not the
that
front
it's not
side
the
of-
front side. And if the commission thinks that that's a reasonable interpretation, that's fine.
I think at this point, to move this project, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that he's put a good case on to not have those, to have the doors where they are. So I don't have a problem with it.
Anthony?
I have a question going back to parking. The orange is the existing, currently running, so in your guesstimate, is half that orange warehouse now? I mean, it looks
Oh, no,
like you're
no,
almost
no,
doubling
no.
the building.
No, there's a small front portion that's office,
So
but
there's-
so for
So
support
the
staff for the
new,
warehouse,
the new warehouse section.
all warehouse.
Is the the old warehouse staying?
Yes.
And I bring that up for, you are at the max parking spaces now, and as businesses grow, employees grow. And we're right now at the max, and then you're gonna start seeing cars parking on the street.
You're
So,
telling us that you've calculated the number of employees at 36, and you have 36.
Yeah,
And you have 36 spaces.
So when we laid this out, we went back to them and asked them, are you going to be comfortable? Would that be your max? And they identified, yes, that would be the max number of employees. So what's happened is they picked up a new client. They need a lot more storage area. It doesn't really involve new employees. If you take a look at the site today, even if you look at the existing site photo, you will notice they're not using even 50% of their parking. So they're not really picking up employees. What will happen is they'll bring a couple more tractor trailers in. Those tractor trailers take product, put it into the warehouse area. From there, they go out on FedEx trucks to their clients. So they need more storage area. And
I get in that, but looking at that picture, doesn't even look like there's 36 cars.
No, there's 44
my
cars
point is
there,
we're
44 spaces. And
As Commissioner Payne said, our lots in town are small, businesses want to grow, and then we have the uneditable parking issue.
Sure.
I'm just trying to get
a
an
lot
idea of.
Yes, we also finding a lot of the dynamics of the business change, like industrial. You used to need one space per 250 square feet because you had one person each machine. Now everything's computerized. Same thing with warehousing. We just did a warehouse down in Higginham. Someone had to build a 30,000 square foot warehouse because they have a contract now with Amazon. They need a space, they don't need the employees. And similar.
I see more, with this addition, more truck traffic in that area, which I guess is a good sign for the town.
Correct, yeah.
But it does come with consequences. I just wanted to, we're
Okay,
maxed out with parking.
Any other commissioner comments? I'm getting the feel that we would go along with your rationale as to doors being that way, and we're not looking to do a text amendment. We would do it,
You don't need to do
have
anything.
to do anything.
Right.
Okay.
But I will put this on my list of amendments to draft and come back to you eventually.
Yeah. Is there anything else we have to do with this at this point?
Well, at this point, no. I think Mr. Cassidy has gotten the information that he needs, so now he'll proceed with his wetlands permit, and he'll be coming back to you at your next meeting for site plan approval.
Okay.
So we have some comments from both
Okay,
Craig
so
and the town
you're all
engineer
set
that we need
now.
to address. Yeah, okay. We just have direction, that's all we're looking for. We appreciate it, thank you.
You want to read 1319?
Yeah, I know. Petition 13-19, extension of map filling deadline for Carrarian re-subdivision at 179 Meadow Street, estate of Fay H. Carranian. Owner applicant Mark Friend, 81 Rankin Road, Glassbury, Connecticut. Contact.
The applicant here? Do we need the applicant?
No. I guess he's here, but this is really a formality. Actually, Mr. Friend did submit the revised plan yesterday, and it's being reviewed by staff. They'll probably be able to get the Mylar signed in time, but I'd advise Mr. Friend to ask for the extension just in case there's a blizzard or something prevents something from happening. So just to be safe, make sure that the plans don't expire.
Okay, so we're all set?
A motion to approve his request would be in order.
So
Make a
moved.
motion to approve an extension.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you're all set now. Next item, Newington Ridge Preserve. Anything to report at this time?
I got a call from one of the homeowners today, just telling me that the homeowners association is meeting with Mr. Massimino tomorrow to plan for their return visit to the Conservation Commission to hopefully get that problem resolved.
Okay, is that it on that?
Yes.
Okay, we don't see anybody from the homeowners association here. Okay, we're going to old business. Item A was out. We're going to take up the Tony Baloney. We have,
I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting these.
someone wing an approval for Tony Baloney's. Dominic?
Want we do it?
Yeah. Just trying to find it here. It's, okay, petition 04, I'd like to make a motion that we approve petition 04-19, special permit, section 3.11.6 restaurant at 2190 Suite 4, Berlin Turnpike, Bianca Real Estate LLC, owner Melissa Tarcanina, applicant Anthony Tarcani. 230 Jubilee Street, New Britain, Connecticut, contact with no conditions.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any comments by the commissioners? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you're all set. Let's talk to the planner and show him what you're doing with the sign, and then you're all done.
Okay, and,
You could have all these back.
okay, that's a question, because I have to now
Okay, then you might need them for
forward
whatever.
them to the electrical and the plumbing.
Yeah, you could use these for you when you're doing your
Yep.
inside
appreciate
stuff. They got some down there.
Yeah. I'll
Okay,
bring
good
them.
luck on
Thank
your.
you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks. Good luck. Yep, thank you.
Okay, we want to take up the sign at, wanna do that
O'Reilly,
one?
yep.
O'Reilly.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve petition 05-19, special permit, section 6.2.4, freestanding sign at 3443 Berlin Turnpike, Garrett Homes LLC, owner and C+ Sign Service, applicant David Hemming, 500 Industrial Park Road, Deep River, Connecticut, contact with no conditions.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any comments from the commissioners? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you're all set too, so you could proceed with the sign.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes care of any other old business? Okay, we're going to go into petitions for scheduling. Quickly on petition A, on the church, want to just,
Right, they've actually bought the house on the corner, and they want to make it part of their grounds. I believe in their application, they said that when the priest is visiting, that's where he would stay. They'll probably conduct classes there, things of that sort. But because it's religious institutions are by special permit, they need to have a public hearing on that. So I recommend the hearing be scheduled for your next meeting, March 27th.
Commissioner
That's all well
Fox.
and good, but Craig, Church Street does not cross Cedar Street. That's the corner of Church Street and Maple Hill and New Britain Avenue.
Britain, yeah. Isn't there a house between that and the church? There's three.
Two. I'm sorry, Commissioner Fox, you're
There's
saying that
one
the
house
house,
between the
the house
church
is not,
and-
this is on the corner. You're saying that the address is not
The
6
house,
Church?
6 Church Street?
Right.
That's on the corner of Church Street
And New Britain
and New
Avenue.
Britain Avenue, not
Right.
Church Street and Cedar Street.
Oh,
We have the right.
okay, yeah, I'm
You're
looking at a different agenda.
have it
Okay,
correct.
yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll go ahead and put this on the for scheduling. I'm sure there's questions because of the house between it, but we'll put it on and we'll see what their rationale is. When you want to do that? Next meeting?
27th.
Okay, good. Any questions, any problems with putting it on? Okay, go into the next one, please. 0919.
All right, this is a building that I think the commissioners are familiar with because it's come before you, I think 3 times since I've been here. The latest prospective tenant is a child daycare as opposed to the adult daycare, which I think it was once approved for. And the daycare requires a special permit, so they've applied. They are also going to be asking for site plan modifications as well, and we'll do them at the same time. So I recommend this be scheduled also for March 27.
Any questions?
Excuse me, Mr. Planner, is this right next to Dutch Point Credit Union?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, go ahead, put it on. Next, 1019, Kiwanis.
Right, this is the Big K flea market I think everyone's familiar with. The last time it was approved for 3 years, but the 3 years have now run out, so they're back for another approval. And again, same thing, I recommend the hearing be scheduled for March 27.
All set? Any
Yes.
questions, problems? No? Okay, good. Next one, 1119.
Okay, our favorite event, the Cinco de Mayo event at Plaza Azteca. There's a memo, I hope you read it, but, so they've asked for another special permit for outdoor seating. The agenda's getting full, and I was going to suggest that we postpone this one to the April meeting, but that would then allow only one meeting to do this, and I'm sure you want more than one meeting to express all of your concerns with the application. So I recommend that the hearing be scheduled for March 27.
Commissioner comments on this, we're all aware of, we have reports and everything to bring forward from the town's perspective.
Right, yes.
Okay. So we'll put that on for the next meeting, so we have enough time. Commissioner Fox.
Yeah, on the reports, Craig, through the chairman, you have actual reports from the fire marshal, the police department?
I have an actual report in writing from the police, but I will get something from the fire marshal.
How about the health inspector?
I can get something from her.
Okay.
Yes, let me make a note of that.
Thank you.
Okay, so that will be put on for the next meeting. The next item on the agenda is town planner report.
Yeah, let me just make some notes here.
You're all set, Mr. Cannelli.
Chairman, see you guys. See you at the next hearing.
Okay, I have 2 items to report. The first is the POCD update. We did receive applications. I sent everybody an email with attachments to the proposals, because at that time, my understanding was that the commission wanted to review the proposals and then collectively decide where to go. I spoke to the chairman about that afterwards, and I think the chairman's preference is to have a subcommittee review the proposals and make a recommendation back to the commission. I think you're all more than welcome to read the proposals also and express opinions, comments, whatever. But the chairman would like a subcommittee to formally come back to this group with a final recommendation.
Okay, at this point, I think that all the commissioners should read and be familiar with the 5 people that sent in the thing, because you will ultimately be the one that votes on who we pick. But to expedite this thing, I think it'd be a lot easier to have a subcommittee of 2 people. I've asked Steve Woods and Dominic Payne to act as the selection committee, to work with the town planner and come back with a recommendation to this committee. And then the committee will vote on the recommendation and bring forward any comments that and we'll have a discussion. But the final approval is from the commission. We'll only take recommendations from the subcommittee. And this is the only subcommittee that will be having on this. The rest, everything else we do, we're going to do as a commission. We're not having other subcommittees do any of the work. We're going to do it as a commission. But to expedite this, I know that the planner would like to have this done sometime this month. So you'll be working with these two individuals. You'll come back and vet them. And I think it'll be just a better process for everybody involved. So we all set with that? Any commissioner concerns about? Okay, we're good.
Okay,
So
good.
you work with Steve and Dominic and get it going, and then come back with us so we could look at it.
Right. Hopefully at the March 27 meeting, if we can have the interviews in time for that. Okay, good, thank you. Okay, and then the next item, I just wanted to make the commission aware that I've been working on what's called an affordable housing moratorium. The word moratorium is kind of I think it's a misnomer, but that's the word that the statute uses, and that's the word that everybody uses. What this is there's a mechanism in the affordable housing law, the law that you're all familiar with, that requires you to approve a project, of an affordable housing project, even if it doesn't meet your zoning regulations, if the town doesn't have 10% of its housing stock affordable. Well, that same law actually has language in it that basically says if a town is making good progress towards the 10%, there's a way to get what I call a safe harbor. You can get a 3-year shield where during that 3 years, nobody can come in with an affordable housing application. The process to get that 3-year moratorium involves a lot of research, and I'm working on it now. And part of the process involves letting the public know that the town is going to be applying for a moratorium and giving the public the opportunity to call for a public hearing on it if a petition signed by 25 residents wants to force a public hearing on it. So that's a possibility. But in any event, I just wanted to make you aware that I have been directed by the town manager to work on this, and I have been for the past couple of months. And by the way, we are eligible. I'm sorry, I should have said that. I've done the math. We do have enough what they call housing unit equivalents to meet the requirement to be eligible for the moratorium. So I think it's very possible if we decide to apply for it.
Well, other towns that have done this too. I believe Brookfield did it right after they did their last project.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Woods.
So it's how we interpret what is
10%.
affordable, right?
Yeah.
So we're counting it different than the people that are in charge of counting it right now.
Well, no, I'm using their rules because they're the ones that make the decision.
Told me.
Well, okay. The units that you can take credit for towards getting this moratorium are different from the units that are part of our 10% affordable housing. For example, there's a group home in Newington. I don't need to tell you where. There's a group home in Newington that counts towards our 10% affordable housing, but I don't get credit for that in applying for the moratorium. It's mind-numbingly complicated, but we do have enough points based on all the affordable housing that we do have in Newington.
Well, how long have you been working on this?
2 or 3 months. Well, not continuously. I mean, I work on other things, during the day.
Well, my point being is, it's kind of odd out of the blue that towns getting in litigation over affordable housing, and for the last 2+ months, unbeknownst to people on this commission, myself, I'm not speaking for anyone else, that you've been working on something at the direction of the town manager to completely go against things that we've already.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, but why do you say that? How is this opposed to what the commission has done in the past?
Because why now is it such an issue to go figure out what our number is on a moratorium, to introduce a moratorium which stalls growth? That's exactly what a moratorium does, it stalls growth in our town. And it's just kind of coincidental that it's now been being worked on.
Court case.
And we have a current court case. So now we're going to go back just like the court cases that are pending on a auto-related use.
It's retroactive too, so it affects a court case.
I don't know why this is just like this quiet
I'm sorry,
little
what do you mean by
thing.
it's retroactive?
In other words, if you get the moratorium and then the court case comes in, I believe, I was reading where it stops. If they win in court, it stops it because you have the moratorium. It affects the past property,
Well, if they win in court, and we don't have the moratorium, this defense, then they win in court, they could begin construction. If the town applies for this moratorium and the Commissioner of Housing approves it, and he was just appointed just a few days ago. If the new Commissioner of Housing approves Newington's request, it will take effect, I don't know how quickly, but it will take a while to prepare the application, and I don't know how quickly the Commissioner of Housing will act on it, but once he or she does, and if he or she approves it, at that point, no one will be able to submit a new application.
Not even the town.
A new application cannot be submitted. Now, what would happen to Dakota, which is in litigation right now, I don't know. I would want an attorney to tell you whether Dakota would trump the moratorium if we're successful or not. I don't know.
Go ahead, Anthony, and then Dominic.
I'm just baffled that, again, just like with the sign ordinances and MODs or MOUs, whatever you want to call them, it's just been going on under the radar at the discretion of powers to be, but they can't come to us 2.5 months ago and say, hey, we've been thinking of this, you guys oversee zoning rules and regulations, but just bypass that group and we'll just dictate you to do this. It's just another kick in our face as a commission. Why are we even here then? Have the town manager come and sit right there and tell her what she wants us to do via you. I'm getting tired of it. Why are we all here every second and fourth Wednesday when behind the scenes upstairs they're doing their own thing against the zoning code? Because a moratorium is based on zoning rules and regulations.
No.
Based off of it.
No.
Yeah, okay.
Not this kind of remember I said a minute ago?
Exactly, not this kind, because someone in the back office did something behind the scenes and didn't want to bring the chairman in
Because the word moratorium in this context is completely different from the moratorium that you know of for zoning.
No.
It's a different word.
You're going to hinder the growth of affordable housing in a town with enacting this moratorium.
You could, if you want to think of it that way, yes.
Or they're protecting the town.
That's the other way to look at it.
You got to look at it that way. Okay?
Okay.
That's like discriminating against a hotel because you feel that there's going to be violence and crime there. There's violence and crime to every home at times with problems. You're going to stop the growth of someone wanting to build a single-family house because you feel there might be a police officer that has to go to that house? Safety, violence, crime, that's exactly what's in the court case. And now I'm just tired of coming here and then basically our hands are always tied because someone else is a step ahead of us in our own town.
Commissioner Fox, then Commissioner Woods. Commissioner Fox.
Yeah, Anthony, I don't know if this, it would, I mean, we're not talking about a local text amendment or change to our zoning regulations. We're talking about
the TOD is no different than what they're doing here. The TOD.
Let's stick to this. At least while I'm talking, okay? And the town planner is just seeing, to me, it looks like he's doing research and just telling us if we can do a moratorium. And
he's not telling us. He's telling the town manager.
Okay, he's telling the town manager.
Get it right. Make sure it's proper that we didn't dictate this as a zoning board.
What would we have to do with it? That's my question.
It's her boss.
Commissioner Woods, then Dominic.
I'm trying to follow it. I thought I did. I think, and again, maybe I have it totally wrong. Actually, I think what you're doing is supporting the position that the commission took. And I didn't vote with the commission. I actually voted against it. But if I'm understanding this correctly, what your chore is, your task is to say, hey, look, you can't come in here and tell us that we need to do this because we're saying we already meet, we meaning the town, the 10%. And you need.
No, he's not saying
We
that.
don't meet the 10%.
No, but we meet enough to be eligible for a 3-year stay on any future, for 3 years on any new applications.
But
for 3 years.
But that comes out, I'm sorry, go ahead.
To get this waiver, I'm assuming and this is where the catch comes into this, that you're going to need a plan of action on how you're going to improve it.
Actually, no.
Really?
Well,
No.
I agree with you that the
Yeah.
purpose of a moratorium, what I've been told, is to come up with a plan on how you're going to reach the 10% in your town.
Right.
Right, and good point,
I
Mr.
agree.
Commissioner. And my understanding is the towns that have been successful in getting the moratorium are the towns whose application did more than just show the minimum requirement, but also showed what those towns are doing proactively to increase their supply of affordable housing. I'm not sure what our application will be able to say in those areas, because we don't frankly do a lot to promote affordable housing. But we have enough affordable housing now to at least be eligible to ask the commissioner for a 3-year moratorium on new applications.
So maybe I understand a little better. If we're asking for a moratorium just to put it off for 3 years because we still don't want to do anything, I
Yes.
think that's a problem.
Just for 3 years.
Exactly.
And I can't support that.
That you're-
If we are asking them to put it off for 3 years so we could put a plan in place that this commission can approve, that is going to bring more affordable housing in, I think that's okay.
It would not be even up that the commission approve, it's that the commission put forward. It would be our plan.
Yeah.
It would-
And that's why I bring the
I think Anthony brought up a good point. I mean, you've been working on this thing for months. As the chairman and as commissioners, I was not aware of it until I read it just read it this week when you sent out the town planners report. I didn't know you were working on a moratorium. I mean, I don't know where it's coming from. You're saying a town manager. I don't think it's coming from the town manager. I think it's coming from somewhere else, but
Her boss.
that's politics. Anthony.
I bring up the word moratorium because 2 years ago, we fought the moratorium on the busway. And we did that so that we could get ahead of it, to understand what we want, what we don't want, what the public wants. And I think we did that well.
It's a development around, not the busway, right? Development around.
I use it because that's those two spots in town, West Hill area and Cedar Street and Fenn Road. So I use the busway loosely, but we all know where those are. That's how I see the moratorium. And when you say moratorium, I'm believing that stalls growth to improve growth future-wise. But that should include the group that is tasked with helping the town grow.
This is just another example, Anthony, of just another example is the train station. I mean, we were never consulted on any of that. We watch TV, we see the town council meeting where the town manager has this vision, I got visions too. They ain't those type of visions where, I mean, it's the tail is wagging the dog, okay?
Well, I'm
We're the
hot.
dog and they're the tail.
I'm hot, and I'm not hot at you. Unfortunately, it's directed at you because you are our
He's the messenger.
liaison between the two. But it just gets back to when other departments just kick us to the curb, and why am I even here?
Well, the other things,
There's other
like the
reasons,
824 reviews, I mean, we don't get those in a timely manner.
So,
We
I
don't
mean, it just-
sometimes-
it-
We don't even get it, and things happen that go against the
I
state
don't-
statute that requires people to do 824 reviews, and we don't even see them. Dominic.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Woods and Commissioner Claffey. I think that if you're going to have a moratorium, that you have to have a plan and a goal of how you want to achieve reaching your 10% affordability and where it's going to be in town and everything. So I would ask that, and I'm disappointed that we didn't hear about this information earlier. Just like the train station, the chairman stated, we never hear about it until months later. I find it very surprising that they have this idea of coming up with a moratorium when they're also promoting a train stop with at least 10 buildings around it, so which are affordable housing. So I find it pretty odd that they want the moratorium, and in the same breath they want to have a train stop with affordable housing around it. I find it pretty odd. I would ask that this commission should be updated with the information that you have, what you've worked on for the last 2.5, 3 months, what the requirements are, so that we could review it and then give some input.
Commissioner Sobieski, you got any questions?
No, my understanding was supposed to be a train station with some, not residential,
Mixed use.
mixed use in it. I don't know where this housing came in.
Yeah, mixed use is
housing.
Mixed use is housing and
Right, I
commercial.
understand it, but I
Not
mean,
necessarily affordable
not
housing,
necessarily affordable. That's what I was wondering. That's where I'm a little confused here.
It has to be
Well,
there.
because I think
Paying
we're,
you on a-
Federal monies asked for mixed use to include affordable housing, so this is done all over the country, and I don't know why in Newington we think it doesn't exist.
They're talking 1,200 people.
well, it does exist, but it would be up to us
But
whether it gets there.
what I'm getting at is it seems like, use the word mixed use around here, everyone thinks it's housing. It's a small portion of a mixed-use development, usually has housing associated that's federally funded to lower the cost so that people can stay in that community. Because in times, when you build a new building, usually rents go up, and the people that live there can't afford it, maybe, and this is how you keep them in it. But it gets back to 3 years ago, we talked about high-density housing, mixed use, and so mixed use is not high-density housing. The people have to be educated that sit upstairs, and I will say this on the record, the ones that sit in this building need to come to these meetings and get educated on the rules and regulations of the town. Because there's lies out there that people think mixed use is high density. It's not. This town's not growing because people don't know the rules and regulations of how federal funds get filtered down so people can live in the community and be affordable. Because this community, for a one-bedroom apartment, is not affordable. It's not.
Right.
A two-bedroom apartment is over almost $1,500 or more to live in this community. That's not affordable. I'm telling you, that this is bigger than people want to let on. That's why this town hasn't grown in 3 years. We haven't had a new housing unit of any form other than a building permit here and a building permit there.
Housing doesn't make the town grow. Commercial property
No,
does.
no, it doesn't.
Yes,
Go to Bloomfield and look at the 1,000 or 1,200 units they put in
Yeah.
just down the street on
And look what they
Cottage
have for
Grove.
industry in Bloomfield that we don't have because we chased it away with high taxes.
We have no place to live. No one can move here. Why does everyone move? Why is all the
Taxes.
tech-savvy jobs going to Rocky Hill and they're moving to Cold Spring Road and Rocky
Because of
Hill?
the high
You gotta
taxes.
remember too, Anthony, that this town is.
But we
is
have
built
the
to
land.
It's built to where?
You have the land for affordable housing.
Where?
Fenn Road, Cedar Street. You have all the vacant land on Day, which is residential. Half a day in Francis is residential. It fit perfect in there. But hypothetically, no one, I guess people don't see that.
That's,
all right.
Commissioner Payne.
that's industrial
Yeah,
over there. You don't want to lose it.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Claffey brought up the moratorium that we had on the 2 TOD areas, and we worked really hard on that, this commission did, and we solved the Fenn Road one. And we were in the middle of working on the Willard Avenue one, and we were supposed to get some reports from the town planner from the state, and we never got those reports, and then it just dropped by the wayside there. And then all of a sudden, oh, yeah, we want the train stop over here at the Cedar Street instead, and we want it for 600 cars. Well, I'm concerned that the ball got dropped over on the Willard Avenue when we were talking about that we had reasons why that was the location that we were using. And I think this commission should pick that back up and determine where the other train stop would be recommended. I mean, we're not going to let the staff tell us where the train stop's going to be.
I don't think it's the state.
I don't-
I think it's the state of Connecticut's telling you where the train
Exactly.
station's gonna be.
Yeah, this,
I agree.
Mr. Chairman,
That I agree with.
They're the ones that are pushing the buttons with the town, is saying, you want a train stop, then come to, you wanna even be put in the queue, then.
Then that should
They're
have,
holding it over our head. If
Well,
you
then that
want a
should have
train
been re-
stop, Then you guys gotta come to us. We're telling you we think it should be on Willard Ave, Cedar Street instead of.
Well, then maybe the planner should have relayed that to us when we were talking about Willard Avenue. Nothing ever happened. We never got additional information. And obviously, he was working behind the scenes with the town staff and the state to move it over to Cedar Street.
If you're talking about the Cedar Street proposal, I learned about it when I went to a meeting at the then Commissioner of Housing, DOT Commissioner, with the manager and the mayor and Councilwoman Anist and the Economic Development Director. So
All right,
the
well,
idea
I'll
of putting
stand corrected then if that's the case. But I still think that we really dropped the ball there. We still have a moratorium over in that area that we haven't corrected. We had a moratorium, though? Or
I
did
think it's expired. It's expired.
It expired?
Yeah.
Okay, with no action?
Right. It expired because the commission didn't do anything.
Well, the DOT.
Well, we tried, we were waiting for information from the state, and you kept on telling us, I'll dig up the minutes.
There is no state report, so I don't know what you mean by the state
You were
report.
going to talk to the state on getting us information on the train information.
You mean DOT?
DOT.
Okay.
And it just went by the wayside.
I'm sorry, I really
I'll dig up
don't
the
remember what
minutes.
you're,
Well,
thank you.
also, the DOT left messages with the town manager and our mayor, and neither called them back for 2 years. They were called a half a dozen times, and then it went the other direction. You know, when they built the busway, they spent $180 million at Newington Junction so they could have a combined train station and a mixed use. And now we're gonna have it where industrial buildings are, that should be jobs. You don't lose industrial buildings for that.
Commissioner.
I believe I first heard about the rail station on Cedar Street in this room here where the DOT put on a presentation.
Town council.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Payne?
That was for the town council.
All right, yeah, I think we were here. And I believe the DOT said option one was Cedar Street, option two was do nothing, and option three was Newington Junction, which they weren't happy with because there wasn't enough parking. I think they wanted for 300 cars. And I think they came up with 250, 270, and it wasn't what they wanted. And I believe that's what caused it to move from there to here. I could be wrong.
Someone got to explain to me the rationale of putting a train station on Cedar Street with 600 cars when the street, I mean, there's no plans as to how the street can even accommodate that number of cars. You're talking about a development, a mixed-use development with 1,200 additional housing units. I don't know, the infrastructure won't handle
The town can't afford it.
First, Mr.
plan.
Chairman.
It doesn't work unless you start doing something drastic with Cedar Street. You won't be able to get in and out of there.
Mr. Chairman.
It's ill-conceived. I don't know. Someone got to explain to me how it's going to work, because I don't see how it works. Commissioner?
No, somebody's got to explain to me how this discussion on the moratorium, on the affordable housing moratorium, wound up being a discussion of, for lack of a better term, conspiracy theories.
The truth doesn't hurt. The truth's right there. He was
Yeah,
working
I
behind
understand
the
that,
scenes.
but let's,
as I said, I'm not mad at him. I'm perturbed every time we turn around and we have a sign ordinance that Park and Rec just says, hey, we're going to go put these up. Who cares about your rules and regulations? And it's little things like that that then implode into big things like this. Just like the time we're wasting our ZEO to go chase after a guy who illegally moves cars. And we sat here with our town attorney and said, this is the best I can do. And I brought up the question, well, what happens when he starts again? And no one had an answer. And where are we right now?
Again.
$24,000 later, in how many hours? We're still fighting the same problem.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree, we're not going to. My point is that we can discuss this from now until doomsday.
Yeah.
And maybe we can discuss these things little by little, but let's just.
Well, we just went through a meeting like that, Mike.
Excuse me?
We went in two different directions in the last meeting you and I were at, so it happens.
Yeah, true.
I have a question for the planner. Who has the authority to put the moratorium in place? The town manager has the authority to do that?
The town,
Is she expecting us to do it?
my understanding is that she
Are
intends
we-
to go back to the town council to get their approval to go forward with it. Once I've completed the application, and we know that we are in fact eligible, which I'm 99% sure we are, at that point, she'll go back to the council for them to approve going forward with it. That's
So
my
the town
understanding.
council has the authority to put in the moratorium?
There's your,
No, it still has to come.
I don't know.
I'm hearing about it. I'm quite frankly, I'm a little concerned because I think any direction to do something like this should have come from the town council. So the fact that work is going through already, I don't know who directed the town manager to act. It certainly didn't come from the town council, and I haven't missed a meeting, so.
Come up, get it
But
on.
ultimately, I would imagine, because it's a town-wide thing, I mean, who else?
Up here, so we get it on the record, because, we're confused. I'm confused as to who has the authority to bring it.
No, I guess, like I was saying, this is the first I'm hearing about it as well, and it seems to me something that's as significant as that should have been a directive of the town council asking or directing the town manager to look into it, investigate it, and come back to us. But it seems as if you were given the direction to go ahead and even start the application process. I mean, but since it is townwide, I would imagine that the town council would have the final say on, yes, go ahead and submit it. But to me, it should have been the town council that said, investigate it first, rather than, or if this idea had been, if she knew about, or if the town manager or whatever knew about it, should have come to the town council, I would think, and say, hey, do you want us to proceed on this direction? So I'm as baffled as you are.
it's our own elected official who's baffled. That's my case.
Why don't we stop
Okay,
trying to assume what happened and
okay.
get the facts, and then we can make a decision, because we don't really know what happened. All right, we've got a town council who just told us that this really wasn't discussed at the table, so get us the information and bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay, so
Which you can.
you want me to find out where the idea originated, or where the request originated? Okay.
Yeah, where it's going from here, I mean, and what our role as the TPZ is. If they're looking for, if our role is to put the thing forward, and they think they're gonna do all of this, then come to us and say, stamp this, they're crazy.
Well, I can tell you that one role that you might play is the regulations say that the community has to be given the opportunity to have a public hearing on it. The public hearing can be conducted by either the town council or the planning and zoning commission. Okay, you have that much role in it at least. But I will find out where this issue originated.
Any other town planner reports?
Nope.
Okay. Communications, any communications?
Yes, I've been emailing you as I've been getting stuff from CROG. We have a meeting tomorrow night. There may be some other stuff coming up. As soon as I get it from you, I will forward it to, everybody.
Thanks, Stanley.
Okay, any other communications?
No, I have none.
Gail, you want to participate, public participation? No? Okay. Remarks by commissioners? Commissioner Claffey.
I won't belabor it, but I think we need to address some, in the sign of times, of people who sat before us tonight with businesses changing and site plans changing. We need to really address our parking. To take an example, if you're out and about, any given day, Monday through Friday, drive down Holly Drive. There's at least 15 to 30 cars that park along that street because they don't have enough parking in the business. So I think when we get all these new applications for new growth and change things, I think it's worthwhile looking at how we calculate, so we don't have to go, well, we did it here, we do it there. You know, is it a time for common sense zoning versus what we have on the books? Because things are changing, and we have to kind of have to change with them, because, I mean, you can't even drive, go down Holly Drive and you'll see what I mean. And I think businesses might go somewhere else if we don't address this. I know I've belabored it month after month, meeting after meeting, but parking in this town for businesses is out of control. How we calculate it, and cars parked on major streets because they can't fit in the lots. And it's just getting worse and worse. And it's getting worse and worse when our CEO isn't here Monday through Friday. It's after hours and on weekends. The town looks like a disaster sometimes with parking.
Commissioner Sopi.
Commissioner, Chairman Ida, a quick question. We had an issue with that new restaurant that opened up at the corner of Brockett and Berlin Turnpike where they had cut a driveway through.
Yes.
Has that been resolved, or is it still in limbo, or? I meant to ask earlier. and
Yeah,
my
they're
fault.
going to be coming in for site plan modification to get your permission to make that cut-through permanent. And I certainly intend to bring in the local traffic authority for his comments on that, and the town engineer, of course. But the answer to your question is it will come to you.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed.
I think give this example of, we approve something, they come in, they show us what they want, and then they do whatever and then they come back and say, well, we did it that way, can you approve it again? Well, bring it forward, it's their right to bring it
Yeah, if it makes
forward.
sense.
Yeah, if it makes sense.
In all fairness, once you brought it up to them, it's closed off. They're not using it.
Right,
There's
right.
a big pile of snow in there right now, which I think there's a pile of concrete underneath that snow.
But they had an approved site,
I-
they had an
you
approved
make a
site
valid
plan
point.
that they
Correct.
should
They didn't follow,
have
right.
followed, and then they just said, well, how would it, we're gonna put we want to be able to access parking on somebody else's property. That's what the whole point of it is.
Well, it's mutual. Both of those owners want this to happen.
Someone should have came to us and
Yeah.
said, this is what we're doing.
I'll tell you, there's not gonna be enough parking for that place, so just tell
Okay,
it.
any other commissioner remarks? Okay, I don't have any, motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I know I just dumped them on you.